think cops are always looking for what's next, and they're looking for the administration to kind of drive what's next. But what I found is the rank and file actually drive change if you allow them to drive it. And so you have to be willing to listen to them. But sometimes they don't know the nuances of how to get program A all the way across the finish line. And so people were aware of what Elk Grove was doing, and they were aware of the information center, but I don't think they truly understood the nuances of how it was going to improve their policing and their decision making and the risk management that comes with it. So, you know, we looked at various models from big cities to New York, from New York to Boston to New Orleans, and obviously they're just a different beast. But when we found Elk Grove and we saw you guys winging it, as you say, we were impressed with your quiet confidence in what you were doing. So we started to say it 7 different ways and try to get staff to buy into the program. So I can't necessarily say they truly bought into it until about 2 weeks ago when they started flying the drone. And their first delivery, their first flight today, I walked in there prior to coming to see you guys, and there's just nothing but smiles.
Yeah.
Tell us how you ended up here, Caitlin.
I flew in an airplane. I was so committed to getting in and out from the airport that I missed the turn to head towards Vacaville. So it took me a long time to get here. But I had 2 double cheeseburgers and fries and a Dr. Pepper.
That'll solve all problems right there.
The trick to ordering is you pretend like there's somebody else you're bringing a cheeseburger to, and you go, oh,
they wanted cheese. They wanted onions.
Yeah, exactly.
This episode today is in Vacaville, California, and today is the very first day of patrol response DFR flights here, so that's pretty cool. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But also, Vacaville is unique in that we are here at a time where they're about, Chief, a month-ish out from completion of a physical build, right? So before we go any further, can you introduce who you are so the listeners know who we're talking to?
Who are you?
Who am I? So I am Chris Polen. Vacaville is my home. I have elementary school to high school. I raised a family here. I've lived here for 45 years. Come up through the ranks of Vacaville, and I recently became the police chief in January of 25. After many predecessors who just had a lot of different visions of what policing looked like. It's kind of my turn to carry the torch and move Vacaville forward. So I'm excited about this new journey. I'm excited about being the police chief. It's been incredibly stressful, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. So every minute of it so far.
You'll be like the president, where after 2 or 3 years of chiefing,
You'll look like this.
You'll have a beard and white hair everywhere.
Yeah, I hope you're ready for that.
Yeah, it'll be good. So take us back to, let's say, 2 years ago. That's about the right time. You guys here at Vacaville started to become interested in a real-time center and wanting something like that for Vacaville. What led to that? What led you guys even starting to consider that? And it could have been before that, but
yeah, honestly, you two. We saw what Elk Grove was doing, and how the path and how you guys delivered in Elk Grove is a little bit of a different path of how Vacaville is going to deliver. But you two kind of set the tone for us, and we saw what Elk Grove was doing. We saw the vision that was being carried forward by your leaders, specifically by you two, and the personnel that was involved, and I couldn't get enough of it. And I recognized a need for the industry to switch gears. And we already had a model. We had a model that was right in front of us, and we couldn't pass it up. Doesn't mean we didn't have challenges along the way, but 2 years ago, it started with you guys. Yeah. And I'm truly grateful to be sitting here with you now.
It's funny when we hear something like that because we were totally winging it.
Yeah.
When we
seat of the pants style.
Oh yeah, when we started in the center, we were like, watching cameras sounds like a horrible job. This job sucks, and now here we are. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys are the pioneers.
Yeah, interestingly is we always tell people, develop the need first. Once you develop a need, then you know you need to build. And there's something to be said, though, that if you are within geographical I don't know, close enough geographically to a functioning real-time center, and you see the effects of that center, what it's having on the community, it's having on policing, you almost can put all of that together you can almost skip that step, right? In a sense, where you're like, okay, we need to do data research in this, where in reality you can look at agency A has the center, we see the effectiveness of that center, right? Was it an easy sell internally?
Not necessarily. I think cops are always looking for what's next, and they're looking for the administration to kind of drive what's next. But what I found is the rank and file actually drive change if you allow them to drive it. And so you have to be willing to listen to them. But sometimes they don't know the nuances of how to get program A all the way across the finish line. And so people were aware of what Elk Grove was doing, and they were aware of the information center, but I don't think they truly understood the nuances of how it was going to improve their policing and their decision making and the risk management that comes with it. So, we looked at various models from big cities to New York, from New York to Boston to New Orleans, and obviously they're just a different beast. But when we found Elk Grove and we saw you guys winging it, as you say, we were impressed with your quiet confidence in what you were doing. So we started to say it 7 different ways and try to get staff to buy into the program. So I can't necessarily say they truly bought into it until about 2 weeks ago when they started flying the drone. And their first delivery, their first flight today, I walked in there prior to coming to see you guys, and there's just nothing but smiles.
Yeah.
So we talked about it for 2 years, and now they're actually seeing the delivery model, and they are super excited. From dispatch to CSOs to your RTIC staff, everyone is starting to say, wow, this is going to be a game changer.
We had the same thing. Nobody wanted the RTIC. We built the room. Nobody wanted any part of it. When we started getting those wins, and now we're making felony stops again, and we're doing X, Y, and Z, we started to get that buy-in. So the quiet confidence just kind of grows because you have this room that's actually making an impact.
Yep.
So even if you don't really know what you're doing, you're knowing that something's sticking, and that was kind of where that came from.
Well, if you guys, if you two or Elk Grove didn't lead in how you were delivering, I don't know if we'd be here today. I just don't know if I think about that all the time. Where would we be if Elk Grove didn't show us the way?
Yeah.
Still question it.
Yeah. So I asked the same question, but for different reasons, right? We had a visionary chief and honestly a visionary IT manager that did their research and decided we're building this. And I remember when they were building, I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I don't think we need it. I just remember that, right? And the irony of that, where then I became the person that got to actually stand it up and do it, to where I'm at today. If it wasn't for that chief and that IT manager, who knows, right? And that, so everything falls together. And
how long ago was that, Jamie? How many years ago?
2018 was when they started in full of, we're going to build this, and started it. July 2019, we opened. And so this is their 6th year now. This will be 6 years in July that it's been open.
I remember one of my former chiefs, John Carley, who's now the mayor. I think it was 2017, 18, around that time. They all must have went to a conference or
Had
something.
to, right?
Yeah.
So they learned something somewhere. Because I remember John Carley talking about the need for an information center. But I didn't necessarily understand his struggles of trying to deliver that product.
Yeah.
Now I understand the struggles of trying to deliver a product.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, by the way, you guys are calling yours an information center.
Yes.
We called ours an information center. What went into that for you guys? Because you were pretty steadfast about that from the time you and I started talking about it.
Yeah, I view Vacaville as we're a quality of life policing city. We're not necessarily a crime city. So I try to, my baseline that whether I'm at a Rotary meeting or I'm at a school meeting, a board of supervisors meeting, whatever it might be, a council meeting, I'm always talking about quality of life. And that's my baseline for all decisions as the police chief. How does this impact quality of life for our residents? And so, we heard different nuances of how these things are named, and it really just stuck with us of an information center because I feel like that is the baseline of improving a service. And whether it's the fire department, public works, human resources, internal messaging, this has a lot more than just crime attached to it.
Yeah.
So we were pretty steadfast on that from the very beginning. We had a pretty good mentor along the way to kind of guide us as well.
The best thing we did was breaking out of crime. Like once we started saying, hey, code enforcement,
Yes.
what sucks about your day to day? Oh, it's this. Okay, well, let's see if we can help that. It changed how our center was kind of built on. And honestly, it was some of my favorite stuff that we did versus actually addressing felony vehicle stops and whatnot. And so it really kind of makes a center if you can look at your city as a whole and say, what do we really need? Obviously, we want to lower crime. That's great. But we can get kind of deeper than that.
So there are folks out there that if they were the recipients of a grant to build a center, they would jump up and down, of course, right? Everybody, I don't think anybody's going to argue that it's not good to receive grant money, right? But I would submit, just from the outside, looking into your process, it's not the simplest thing either, as far as being a good, really fiduciary of that fund, right? And to make sure that you spend it wisely. How's that going for you guys?
We have, we have very good money management through this process, and we did receive the BSCC grant of the $4.4 million to fight against organized retail theft. And we saw this grant come out, and we were beyond belief happy because we knew that this was a potential opportunity to be a game changer for our region. So we sought out help to figure out how to write this thing appropriately. How are we going to connect with the state who is reviewing the grant? How are we going to make an impact with organized retail theft? And we felt this was the best pathway to make a huge difference, not only in Vacaville, but in the region if we can get our partners to buy in. But I will tell you, they're very... there's a lot of oversight in how you spend that money. Mm-hmm. And when you're spending it, it's approvals for every ask. It's going through the state to say yes, no, yes, no. And when you buy a product, whether it's cameras or software or building a center, you have to make sure that your vendors are vetted. You have to make sure that you're spending the money wisely because there's only so much of it. You think $4.4 million is a lot. It is. But when you're talking about construction and technology, it goes very fast. And we're talking about a DFR program. Wow, that's a game changer in how much you're spending.
Yeah.
So we were told early on, be careful how you spend the money, report it correctly, and just be completely forthcoming with how you're spending the money. Transparency means a lot to the state, and so we have divulged every piece of construction, all software. And I think we've built a really good relationship with the state, and I give Nikki a lot of credit for that.
Yeah. So speaking of her, and we're going to do an episode with her as well here. Early on, you were committed to the concept, and very similarly to Elk Grove, where it made sense to you and in the agency here, you were going to bring in a professional staff person to run this real-time center. Aside from the buy-in, generally speaking, to real-time policing, how was that received here? Was there wide support for it? What went into that decision? Because people are kicking that decision around across the country every day. Who do I have run this? Who do I have staff this?
Let's see how I can answer that as the best I can, Jamie. From the very beginning, this was a professional staff from the very beginning. I think we talked about what a sworn staff person would look like for about 5 minutes. And what I get frustrated with as going through the ranks, I should say, and now as the police chief, longevity is key. Consistency is key. And that institutional knowledge of what someone is doing is invaluable. And police officers promote, they go to different assignments, they move in and out. And so we're losing that institutional knowledge of what a program can do if you have the right person in it. So we thought about it for about 5 minutes. We said professional staff. We started looking at different cities in comparison to salaries and job titles. So that was another hiccup, or I should say a challenge that we had to go through. And when we found Nikki, we hit the gold mine. Hit a gold mine. She has challenged me every step of the way. She has been a bulldog in making sure that we're being heard. She's delivering a product. I can tell you that I'm really good about ideas. I love innovation. I love leadership. I love all about it. But if you don't have a Nikki driving the bus home, you're not going to be successful. And this program would not be successful without Nikki and Aaron Dahl, who's since retired. But those two were the driving forces.
I think that's an interesting concept when you build a center, and we got to learn this, is regardless of rank that you normally see in a police department with your sworn staff, your non-sworn staff, having your RTIC almost creates a direct link between the chief and that person, you and Nikki, where you have to have a little bit different understanding of, hey, I'm going to trust you to drive this bus. I'm going to trust you to take it in the direction it needs to go. Regardless of the rank and the structure we normally see, you and the RTIC kind of become your own separate pair. And I think that's an important relationship to build upon.
We're still working on it.
It's all right.
And that's a good point that you bring up, because I don't think most people understand the structure of what the RTIC manager and what the chief, what they bring together. I saw it because of what you guys were experiencing in Elk Grove and all the conversations that we had with each other. And I understood the importance of it. But now I truly see the value in it. And we're still working through it with, this person is equivalent of a whatever rank,
Sure.
but they're constantly communicating with the chief.
Yeah.
So people are a little bit taken back and wondering why. But this is a project for the Vacaville Police Department that is so meaningful to all of us that we cannot get this wrong. And if there's any heat that needs to be taken from it, I have to take it.
Yeah.
So part of building a program is adjusting, and when you get hit every once in a while, the chief needs to take those hits.
We
So
lived in every bureau at the department.
That's where I was going to go, right? So we in Elk Grove fell under every, I think we called them divisions there. We did it reversed.
I'm glad you knew that.
Yeah,
I
divisions are
didn't know.
bigger, bureaus are smaller there. So right, but at the end of the day, we ended up back with the office of the chief, and the reasoning was very simple. We were charged with fulfilling the chief's philosophy of policing, which ultimately was between the chief, the city manager, and city council and the community, right? Regardless of who was in between our real-time center and the chief, it was almost moot, because if the chief said this is our philosophy, we knew the marching order, right? And so it just made it could have made it difficult. We actually never had a difficulty being in any division, but it could have been problematic, right? Where if the captain at the time thought, well, no, I want to do this. Yeah. Well, if the chief wants to do it this way, and we know that makes it hard, right? So that's kind of where we ended up, and they're still there. Unless things have changed, they're still in the office of the chief for that reason. It's like, as I like to tell people, we just dispensed with the bureaucracy between the two. Right, we knew our place. Our place was, we're going to police under the philosophy established above us. We didn't need 3 layers of people to ultimately make a decision that we already knew the chief was going to make this way. And so and vice versa. The chief could call us, which he did all the time, or just walk in and go, I need you guys to focus on this. And there was nobody getting hurt feelings about, the chief giving kind of direct.
I think we're working through that now.
Yeah.
There's a good understanding, because this has kind of been the baby for a while with me and others. So people are giving us a lot of grace on how to make this thing work. So
Good.
I don't think there's a lot of hurt feelings as of yet, but we're still working through that structure.
as you get more buy-in to it, it starts to just kind of go hand in hand where
Good.
people stop caring about what you and Nikki are doing. They
Yeah.
just see that there's a cool thing happening at the department, and we're just happy to be on board.
I like it.
You're almost there.
Good advice.
Yeah.
So the flash of the center. Now this is going to be a curse for you guys because it's going to make you have a lot of tours here, right? But I can't wait for people to see what the center looks like, right? Just the design of it is super cool. You guys have a great partner that's building this center for you, and I'll let you guys announce that when the time is right. But yeah, what went into that? Just the idea of how do we want this to look, right? And the aesthetics of it.
So we toured Elk Grove, obviously, Chino, New Orleans. I think Nikki went to, was there one in Beverly Hills?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think she went there. So we were trying to make it in comparison to our city size. You know, you go into New Orleans, it's massive, right? I mean, the amount of people they have in there, the amount of stations they have in there, it's not suitable for Vacaville. And then obviously Elk Grove leading the way. We found that to be a very similar size understanding. But one thing that we felt we really needed was a conference room adjacent to the information center. And then the manager, being Nikki, she needed her own office space pretty much attached to the RTIC. And so we started with that philosophy. And then we started working through with records because we were kind of taking over some of their space. And one of their leads in there, Brandy, she actually says, you should probably just pull it all the way out to this wall here or to these pillars. And we hired a consultant to come through and kind of direct us on what that looks like. And so once we got buy-in of the scope and size, from there was it's all hands. Let's go. And so we were super excited to get the buy-in from records, to have that reassurance from a consultant to come in and say, hey, this is probably a good space based on all the wires that need to be pulled, cutting down some of your cost. So once we had that reassurance that we can do this in this space and looking at different centers and the size of them, we felt like we can do this.
Yeah.
When I helped build our mobile command center way back when everybody was buying a mobile command center. And one of the things we did was go look at a bunch of other people's.
Yeah.
And usually what you'd see is either, hey, we work out of this little van for our command posts. It works really well. We have all the space we need. We really don't need a lot. It just looks like a big old hoopty. Or you would see the opposite, right? Which was we got a bunch of grant funding and we bought this monstrosity and we don't really use
Biggest
it.
thing we could buy.
Yeah, we don't use it, but it's cool and it looks neat. And I think real-time centers kind of fell into that too, where you either see them where you walk in and you're like, this is very unimpressive, but they're clearly working. It clearly is okay for them. And then you'd walk into others where you're like, okay, it's huge, but there's one operator in the room. Yours is the first I've seen that really is like, if I could build one, this is how I would want it, to combine aesthetics with function and really make sure it's the right size for you guys. And so I just want a job and I just want to come work in there.
Oh, Caity, we'd hire you.
Okay, good.
But-
Awkward moment on the Flock Safety
But
podcast.
I know
but
Flock
here I go.
is a growing company, and you're not want to come back to little
I'm
old
leaving.
Vacaville.
Nope, I'm leaving. I'm working in the
I am-
center
I am
starting today.
So proud of both of you for what you've
man,
accomplished.
It's cool. We like being where we're at, that's for sure. But we always talk about, even just going through here today, right? Just seeing the progress of the center. Both of us were like, we're going to come back when it opens, and we're going to work in it when it opens, just because like that's something we'd want to do. And I remember coming through the department before you made the final decision where you're going to build this thing, and we looked at a variety of spaces. One of them very small, right, just off the EOC, and really the question was, can this work, right? And the answer from me at the time was, I think it can work, but will it work for what you want it to grow into, et cetera? And one space was quite large, right? It was kind of a bullpen style area. And again, it's do you need that much space, and what would you do? You guys hit the sweet spot on this one, I think, because you're going to be able to grow into this one for quite a long time. And that's great. Lessons learned for other departments when it comes to that is just that idea that if you overbuild, you're always going to look empty, and people will wonder what the city is spending money on, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you underbuild, they're going to think that your productivity is limited because you have a space that's super confining. So I just like the space. So again, you guys are going to have massive tours.
I hope so. And I hope that most agencies that are similar in size to Vacaville, because there's a lot of them out there, either they're, a little bit larger than Vacaville, or they're, the 30 to 70,000 population, they can see themselves fitting into this type of space as well. So I think I'm hopeful that it's a universal space that people can look at and say, okay, I have an understanding of how big I need to build this.
Yeah.
But this started with flock, right? If you want to go down that road, let's go down that road. But flock has been a huge partner for us for many, many years. We had a homicide, and I remember we were just getting into the camera game. I think we had 5 cameras in the city. And, there was a few downtown and one on Davis Street or something like that. We had a small little grant that we were dealing with. And we had this homicide on one of our streets. And I was so frustrated. As a former detective, and then I saw this homicide take place, I was so frustrated for the victim's family, our detectives, our staff who were impacted by this case. And we just had limited resources to go off of, old school policing. How many people saw this? Let's go see who has a camera and walk the street, who has a Ring doorbell, who saw what in the middle of the night, so we can just go potentially get a car description, something. And I just got frustrated with that. And what I found was the information centers bring cases to close significantly faster based on information that's being developed. And we give Flock a lot of credit for that, because actually it's probably becoming more of a problem because we have more leads now than people to solve the cases.
Stop sending me alerts.
Right.
I'm good.
Yes. Yeah. So we just I was frustrated at the moment. That was kind of my time. I think it was 2018-ish. That was my time of saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
And we have to do policing differently. We have to manage our resources differently. Risk management needs to go down. We need to make better decisions. We have to inform our officers. There's a belief. We hire them right, we train them right, you equip them right, and you treat them right. They'll want to come. They'll want to come to your agency. And our job right now is to equip them right. It's not necessarily what's always on their tool belt. It's the DFR or the flock cameras helping them solve their cases. That's part of the equipment, and flock has been the driving force behind it.
Yeah, I remember. So Vacaville had a great camera system kind of early on. You guys had an officer, Adam Simpf, right? And he built this point-to-point camera system. I remember coming down here because I wanted to talk to him about, we were looking at Flock, we were looking at some other stuff, and I remember talking to him about cameras, and I'm like, what do you guys use here? He's like, humbly, with humility, he's like, yeah, I built this, right? Yeah. And he wasn't lying, right? He built the network that it was. You see that across the country. You see like a department has this one guy or this one lady that really knows this or finds interested and builds it, et cetera. And I look at real-time centers as just bringing all that together, right? So you're taking that point-to-point system that he built, right? And you're bringing it into have purpose every call for service now, as opposed to just investigatively.
I've been talking a lot about missing persons and same things. We look at those and you find that real time almost always finds that person before anybody else can. And how many times did we find a person and said, how have we never done this like this before? Like your family member goes missing, they drive off in a car, they're wandering down the street, and we're finding them instantly with DFR, with live cameras. It's like, how have we spent so long in policing, doing a grid search and doing all this only to turn up nothing, where now we're just solving cases and we're giving folks closure quicker than we could have thought before.
Well, and I think it expands. I mean, I think Elk Grove has been, again, a pioneer in showing how public safety. So I'm looking at our fire department now and saying, when the DFR is up, let's send that image to the fire captain that's sitting in the right seat responding to the call for service, where if it's a major traffic collision or it could be a fire, it could be anything. Let's send it to them so they know what they're getting into prior to arriving. And so it's going to be a game changer when we start feeding them as well. And Public Works, let's start doing the same thing for Public Works. This thing is limitless as long as there's funding for it.
Yeah,
right.
That's the piece, right?
That's the piece.
So it's there's this. I hate the word balance sometimes because it's an unfortunate thing that always exists when it comes to budgeting, especially with government funds. But there's this balance between what we know would work and what we could afford to do, right, at any given time. And then now that you're in the hot seat as chief, you have to make the decision now. Do I ask for tech piece A or body 63, right? Or whatever it is. And I think that's going to be, I think we're to a point right now in the industry where those hard decisions are going to be every fiscal year prep season, right? What is that balance, right? I know the efficacy of this. Your first DFR deployment today, we happened to be in there when it happened. It made it to the scene before your ground unit made it. So that was the whole concept, right? So at some point, be it next year or the following year, you're going to be in that seat, right, in the office going, do I expand this or do I bring more bodies? Do you see that always being a frustration? Or do you think that tech is almost going to prove itself to a point where it's almost inherently understood? We're just going to increase a tech budget, X each year. How do you see that going, do you think?
I think with government, we're always lagging behind in reference to best practice. And the reason why we lag behind is because there's not a lot of funds to invest to figure out what's working and what isn't working. So if we can show that the model is successful, not only in the police department, but in the fire department or Public Works, and then legal looks at it and says, hey, your claims are going down, or we can back up what your officers did based on what we have or what we saw, there's buy-in from a variety of groups. So I think smart tech is going to drive policing forward.
Yeah.
But we have to be mindful. It's just not, we can't just keep throwing money out to see what tech works. We have to vet it, and there has to be assurances that this is going to deliver.
Right.
And you guys showed us the way of what's delivering.
Yeah. And now you get to step into that, right? Because I agree 100% there. I tell people all the time, there are two things I bought that in hindsight, I shouldn't have bought as a real-time manager. But at the time, nobody else had them. And so
Caity's salary.
Caity's salary. I definitely shouldn't have bought that. Yeah.
Big purchase.
But at the time, nobody else had it. So you have to do your due diligence and you vet it, but then you're taking it's a risk, right? You're going to grab that. But now all the other agencies can look at that and go, I'm not doing that. Or, hey, that works for me, and I will do that. So you guys are in that boat now, right?
We are. And now we're in the boat of, okay, the grant's going to expire in December of 26. So I'm already ramping up of, okay, how am I going to get this across the finish line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that the decision makers in the city see the value, but I am already feeling those questions of, will this offset an officer or a CSO or a dispatcher? I'm already getting it.
So that brings up something that we have started doing internally and for agencies, but there is a need, in my opinion, for an agency to be able to show the return on that investment at any given time, right? So it's that idea of all the tech that you put together here, Chief, how many bodies does that equal, right? Which kind of sounds funny when you say it that way, but everybody knows what we're talking about. Is a body costs X dollars and can do 2,080 hours worth of work every year minus vacation. How does this work here? And I think that's where you guys are already starting to show, how do we gauge that? What do we do to measure it?
We've seen that across many agencies that communication is the number one success or failure in an organization. And so the information center, as you guys have gone through, has to be the hub of sharing information. And we believe that's going to allow buy-in. we believe once we can share stats that are automated, that's sitting on the big board in the RTIC, and the decision makers are coming in and seeing, this is how many case numbers you pulled, this is your response time for today. When they can start seeing those integrations happen, and they can ask for, hey, what's going on in my district, and we can feed it to them within 5 minutes versus old school percentages.
Yeah.
Or they can log in and see something that's happening in their district, or this EOC concept changes the way we do emergency operations because we have an RTIC. Once they start seeing and understanding, that's when I feel like, okay, let's invest here, because this is going to be a community benefit, not just a PD benefit, but a community benefit.
Which starts to be a no-brainer.
Yep. Yeah, and that part is huge, because Vacaville, like you said earlier, quality of life, right? This is a community that enjoys a lower crime rate than some surrounding communities. And to me, that's almost harder to protect, right? Because there's an understanding of what we want as a community, then there's what we need. Oftentimes those two things don't get along very well, and so your job now is as the face of the department is to show them this is why I believe this is going to have such a good community impact for what we're doing.
I don't know if you guys experienced this, but how do you show, or how did Elk Grove show, or now that you guys both work for Flock and you're traveling the United States, how are different organizations showing that value? What are they doing that's saying, hey, decision makers, you need this or you want this?
Yeah, I get, I call it the luxury. I have the luxury of talking to electeds and executives of agencies basically every day now across the country. And what I learn from them first is what is your community about? Some of them are obvious. Some of them are very high crime areas, and it's just obvious. You need to help mitigate some of that. But not all of them are that obvious. And so really to start looking at, I ask them, tell me about your community. What is it that your community expects of your police department or of your sheriff's office? And once you know that, then you can help them start to tailor that delivery of what that real-time policing strategy should be. And there's some areas that emergency management is probably more of a focus than even fire or police, right? Just because they have their Tornado Alley, right? Yeah. Places like that. Some places fire is going to have a heavier need because of, say, the density of the urban environment to where they're running trucks and engines and everything else down. So it really comes down to what you're doing to provide a service. And we'll go back to Vacaville on this one. You're going to provide a service that Vacaville is a growing community geographically, right? And you have to provide a service that not only lands eyes on a call for service quickly, but for those who don't know about Vacaville, every year something burns near here. Yes. And almost every year you have to evacuate some segment of your city's population. And so there's this emergency management need, and that's a hard one to staff because you staff for the what if and when, where police work, something's going to happen at some point. So long answer to your short question, that return on investment is so unique to each location, but you have to really start with what's important to the community. Like what is important to each of your elected city councilors, what is important to your city manager, what is important to you, and then the community as well. And that'll help you with that return, I think.
I think that city manager piece is big. We, similarly to where Nikki goes directly with you and you guys have this kind of symbiotic relationship, we had the same thing with our city manager where Jamie or I could go and talk to him about something, whatever connection that is. And between us, the chief, and the city manager, we had kind of a good working relationship on whatever the hot thing was for the city, right? If there's civil unrest, if there's fires, if there's COVID, we were all kind of on the same page on what the focus was. As we started to establish that relationship, RTIC just became part of the name for our response. So if the city manager was talking about, how we're addressing graffiti in parks, RTIC is a part of that because they already know we're plugged in. And so we almost didn't have to show a statistical return on investment.
Yeah.
People really bought in because they were hearing us associated to changes they were seeing.
We had an unfair advantage, though. COVID define the real-time center in Elk Grove. And had it not been for COVID,
Yep.
I don't know how we would have defined it. I had a plan, but I don't know if it would have worked out the same. And so because of COVID, we were so involved in everyday aspects of everything that we were doing as a city that being the emergency manager at the same time, that created this unique environment, right? Where me and the city manager talking was not outside the realm of just norm. Yeah, and so that still is outside the realm of normal for most places, right? But that's something that you guys will have here for sure. In your first year here of being open and you being the chief, it will become very evident what matters and what tech is actually helping, in my opinion, from what I've seen.
I think the only other piece that we did kind of unintentionally that helped with our city was anytime somebody creepy would come into the lobby or go and yell at our planning department or our city staff,
it would kind of float back to the police department. We would investigate it, and then we'd push out an email to our city staff to say, hey, if you see this guy, call the police department. And we kind of had to find that line between, we don't want to give them a ton of info, but we want them to know that there's something a little bit wrong here. We took those communications over, so we would push out those bulletins about them. The city appreciated it because it gave them the info they wanted. It took us about 7 minutes to make each one.
By us, it's her.
Yeah, by us.
Yeah.
You know, Chief, by now that who does the work around here. It was a very small thing, but again, it started getting like RTIC in the mind. It started getting us that connection with the city. The more that you can do that, I think will help open the door for emergency management and things like that to kind of staple yourself beyond just crime.
Yeah. What I like about your community is it's a proud one. And so they're going to like the idea that your drone was able to see that reported structure fire and you were able to deploy the resources that were needed as opposed to what may not be needed, right? So
Sure.
you guys have a lot of events here too, just civic events, right? So
We do.
There's going to be a lot of benefit in ensuring safety. We're not far from Gilroy that had the active shooter at their festival. These are always concerns. And so that, when you go to a place and this place incorporates drones in the sky, cameras on the ground, LPR technology, they are at minimum going to be able to respond to this quickly, I think is huge.
You hit on something a little bit ago of Vacaville has an expectation of being safe. And it's a challenge for every chief to step in and maintain it. And so when it's not, you'll hear about it. And if their quality of life is impacted, you'll hear about it. And we do hold a lot of events, and our level of security for events is, you see what happens across the United States, and so you're trying to prepare for that. But you're trying to get people to understand that to prepare for that, it costs money. And, we invested in all the things that you just described, including, a trailer or a camera trailer. We're investing all over the place to try to make sure that the security is first and foremost. I just hope that our community, I think they will, because we do have a very supportive community in reference to public safety. I'm hoping that they see the value in this. Mm-hmm. And I hope the council sees the value in this, and I hope our other agency sees the value. We have another city right up the street who's a smaller city, and I would love to figure out how to incorporate them from our center, knowing they don't have necessarily the financial means, but they have the same nuances as we do. They have events, they care about community safety, they're learning how to police their city as they continue to grow. And so I would love to be a partner with them, but it's hard to get. I'm worried about getting buy-in from my bosses, let alone getting buy-in from theirs. But that's how fast this thing is moving.
Yeah. And
in my time here as a chief, if I can get people to regionalize with us, that would be a dream come true. I'm not so certain it's going to happen until people see the wins, and hopefully that Vacaville can deliver that.
We were lucky that way. So in Elk Grove, we were lucky in the sense that we built before it was a thing. And so all of the neighboring agencies saw what we had before they ever really thought they should build something or do something. And so I needed bodies, and so mine was a very simple answer. You send us bodies and we will real-time police for you, and it worked out well with the smaller agencies that were nearby. I don't know that that's still the case everywhere, right? Because now people, I don't know if it's unfortunate or not, but people see what real-time centers bring, and now they want that too, right? As opposed to just the efficacy of it, they want the physical nature of it, right?
Almost like dispatching.
Exactly like that, right? So in California, and it's probably changed by now, but we used to have 454 PSAPs in this state.
Wow.
And I've always said at least half of those have never been needed. You could have consolidated somewhere and not had that many. I really feel that way about real-time centers. There is not a need for there to be a real-time center in every single city.
So why does it happen? What's your thought process of why people want to build it?
It's going to be blunt. I believe that there is a lot of ego that drives decisions. And that doesn't mean necessarily that it's the chief's ego. It doesn't mean that it's the elected's ego. It could be the city's ego, right? Just the
just wanting
community's.
our own.
That's right. We want our own thing. We're not going to be driven by somebody else. And to some extent, I get it. I understand that, right? But when you dive into that and you think, okay, let's say in Solano County that you have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 incorporated cities in an unincorporated area. If you take that and let's say every city decides we're going to build our own thing, whatever that might be, how in the hell are you going to communicate that necessary intel efficiently so that each of those operates symbiotically? And that's where I think you have an issue with these. Where a 911 center, you can almost say, well, we're getting our own 911 calls and this and that, but it's a rare day that somebody that is in Vacaville committing a crime isn't from an area around Vacaville, and vice versa.
Well, good.
I think the workaround there, this area does such a good job at mutual aid. I used to come out and work with Vacaville and Fairfield during the 2017 kind of era of fires. Mm-hmm. And you got to see all that kind of thrown out the window where regardless of who has a PSAP, who doesn't, who has X, Y, and Z, it all kind of blended together and the rules kind of went out the window because we knew we were responding to these regional fires. So I think if you look at it that way and maybe use those type of scenarios to build that regionalization where you say, hey, you may not want to come and play with us today, but this is an open door when you do. And so when those fires happen, when these huge events come up, where, there's always a seat at the table for those partners, I think that will help kind of bridge that gap. And then they start to see, okay, there's some value here.
Yeah.
I see the collaboration that we've had with, everyone in Solano County using flock cameras.
Yeah.
Everyone on the same CAD system. We're major victories when everyone agrees on systems. One, it's reduced price. Two, it's collaboration of information sharing. And so, I hate seeing people splinter off because of, whatever reasons. Because there's so much value and so many wins that come when people are on the same systems in the same county. So, I guess that's probably for another day, but we'll continue to invite and say, hey, our house is your house. Come sit with us.
Yeah. And the difference is, I'll be here sitting, for sure. The difference though is your center will be built and running where others are concepts, right? And so that's a good thing in my opinion, because if an agency wants to build their own, okay.
Yeah.
But at minimum, you have to collaborate on intelligence sharing real time to where you're not at a disadvantage because you didn't co-locate.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I like that.
And that's really the big piece for me is if you're a small agency, which there are 3 in this county that I would consider small, it behooves you to find a larger agency that you can partner with, right? To do that at minimum. Those ones to me are a given, right? Those ones, in my opinion, that's what you do. But I love this county. So
plus their RTIC is super cool
fail.
looking. So just go in there and
true.
You get to hang out in it.
It's nice, the design, and I know Nikki's coming in soon to talk to you guys, but the design that we went with, we were told dispatchers like the rooms dark.
Mm-hmm.
And then so other centers we've gone in, some were dark, some had plenty of light, and every single one that we went into, we hate the light, make it dark.
Yep.
So the information center itself is dark. The conference room is going to be light.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's so fun to go through a process. You know, if you buy a home together and you're picking out carpet and what appliances you want and what color paint do you want. So Nikki and I went through all that.
That's some serious bonding.
Serious bonding.
That will really bring you two together.
But what I've learned is, Nikki, it's awesome. Whatever you choose, it's awesome. You know.
Good husband.
Yeah.
Right
So
there.
she,
Good
you know,
work.
she just kind of drove the bus, but you know, bless her heart, she would basically say, these are our 2 options or 3 options, and she'd put the one that she likes
Yeah.
right in front.
Yes.
It's like when you ask a kid, do you want juice or milk?
Yes.
The kid's like, milk, of course.
She knew.
Yeah.
She played me like
Smart.
a fiddle. And
We would
Yeah.
not have been able to do that together.
No.
We would have
No.
argued.
Well, first,
the
I
entire
can't
time.
see color, so
That's true.
I would just go along with whatever, and that's
good.
We would have argued endlessly, though.
true.
You two get along much better than we did.
Yeah.
What would you guys have argued over? I'm
We
just
argue
kinda
about everything. We've gotten along on this podcast.
This is nice, you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably longer than we ever have.
Yeah, and it's really just because if we didn't, it'd probably end. So
Yeah.
we're kind
Yeah,
of
that's
forced to
true.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a supervisor, not my supervisor, once write me a performance notation. And you remember old school policing, you write it on a paper and you
Yeah.
go and present it to said
Yeah.
employee. And he presented it to me and he handed it to Jamie to put into my file. And Jamie crumpled it up and used it for his coffee.
I needed a coaster,
Yeah.
Oh.
as it
The
were.
rest of the day.
So
Did she not perform well? And you said, you know,
He didn't even put it in my file.
I
He literally let it collect
feel
coffee.
like it was better served as a coaster to
Yeah.
a coffee mug.
It was like a
than-
6-paragraph accommodation.
It was a
too.
long
It was
one,
a
yeah.
whole
she's still
thing.
impacted by that, Jamie.
She
Yeah.
clearly this is a trauma that we've been working unpacking for
Yeah.
years.
He
now.
left it for weeks too. It just sat as his coaster for a long time.
I want you guys to know this. This is on a serious note. You know, I'm not sure how much Flock gives you credit for, but they should credit you, both of you, for leading the way. And you know, I know Flock has been very successful in their business, and I'm super proud of businesses who make game-changing decisions to help policing, because we need that. Our men and women out there every day wearing body-worn cameras, a lot of tools on their belt. And it's our jobs as police chiefs to make sure that they have the most up-to-date equipment and most up-to-date information to make decisions. And Flock has been that game changer for the industry. And I hope that you guys continue to expand. But you two, specifically for this region, have moved us forward. You moved Vacaville forward, and I know Vacaville is going to move other people forward. At least that's my hope. And when you talk to Nikki, you're going to understand why people are going to move forward. She's very dynamic in her delivery. She's extremely knowledgeable in what she's trying to accomplish. And I guess if I had one piece of advice for anyone looking to build an information center, find someone who's driven like Nikki, is detailed like Nikki, and can communicate like Nikki. Because if you do, you will find your success. Most cops are really good at saying, I want, but don't know how to deliver the product. And most city managers are saying they already know how much the budget is for the police departments in their region or their cities, and it's significant.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we usually have the largest budget, so when we come and ask them for more, they're usually kind of, do we really need this? And the Nikkis of the world can show the city managers why it's important. So, but if it wasn't for you two, for this region, I probably wouldn't have Nikki here, number one. And number two, I would not be on a podcast with Flock. I mean, if you watch my career, this was not part of the equation.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for that. But it's
Chief.
also there's a reason why we got to be successful in Elk Grove. And we've said it on this podcast quite a number of times, but also when we get to present and talk to other people, which is, if it weren't for the vision of the original chief, which was Brian Noblet, and then the vision of the next chief to get it built, which was Tim Albright, and then the vision of the current chief, Bobby Davis, to continue it,
Yes.
we wouldn't have had the latitude to do what we did. So there's that. And then we both are lucky that we landed at a private enterprise that shares the same value system as what I wanted in law enforcement, which is we want to eliminate crime, right? And we want to make an impact on the community. And so I came to this particular business on purpose because it's an engineering company, engineering things to help eliminate crime, and we get to work within it. So, and we get to do a cool ass podcast. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you very much.